You're listening to the Tony Steuer Podcast, where Tony interviews financial literacy advocates who are changing the conversation on money, so you can catch up on the latest trends and ideas in the world of financial literacy and education.
Welcome to the Tony Steuer Podcast. I'm pleased to be joined today by Will Rainey. Will is an author, speaker, and founder of Blue Tree Savings. In this episode, we'll be discussing how to talk to your kids about money and Will's book, Grandpa's Fortune Fables, Fun Stories to Teach Kids About Money. Will, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We've had some great conversations, and so I'm glad you can share with the audience. So, to get started, what is your origin story? How did you get started in financial education?
So I kind of fell into it. So for my background is that I'm an actuary by background. So just a recap for people who haven't heard of an actuary. So essentially an accountant who loves statistics. So I was working with insurance companies and retirement schemes. So I was doing that in the UK. And in 2014, with my job, I got an opportunity to move to Hong Kong to be the head of investment strategy for a global consultancy firm. And so that's a fantastic opportunity to travel around Asia and meet all these very large institutions and talk about their investments. But then it was around 2017-ish, I think. I was talking to someone about my two young daughters, and they said, just enjoy this time with them. They only grow up once. And it's a very obvious statement, but it had a really profound impact on me. And I was like, they do grow, and I'm working quite a lot. I'm going to put in place. So I spoke to my wife. We said, right, we're going to put in place a plan so we can leave our full-time corporate jobs to spend a few years with our daughters. And so 2019, we left Hong Kong and moved to Vietnam and start this kind of adventure. Kids at international school, but the key piece was when I wanted to do something when my kids are at school. And what really struck me is when I left Hong Kong, a lot of people said to me, how can we afford to take time off corporate work without a salary? And these are people who are in the financial services industries and I know were earning good money. And I was kind of shocked that it seemed like such a surprise to them that someone could do this. And it turns out it's just my wife and I have just kind of been savers and investors for the longest time, and because our parents just happened to be. And so we've always been, as we had this kind of savings and investments, which we kind of live off for a period of time so we can have this opportunity with our kids. And so I was like, right, I want my kids to have that same opportunity when they're older. I want them to. So I started talking to them about looking after their money. And I did it when I was going to bed. So I'd try and say, use a kind of made up story, but I put a sort of a money lesson behind it. And so they really enjoyed it. So I started sharing that with some friends and family, and they enjoyed it. So then I thought, well, I'm going to start a blog. And so Blue Tree Savings started from me just sharing some of how I taught my daughter about this money lesson or this money lesson, whether it's saving, investing, about debt, credit cards. And I got really passionate about it from that. And so some of my blogs got picked up by like the Financial Times, etc. And I started talking to companies because they were inviting me to come and talk to their employees about how they can teach their kids about money, but kind of as a bit of a Trojan horse to also helping their employees learn about money as well in a kind of fun way. And so from there, it's just kind of grown and grown. And as I had a number of different stories, I've put those into a book, and that's the Grandpa's Fortune Fables that you mentioned. So that's kind of my story.
Well, that's great. And I think, it's something I know with me is, I started talking about some of these things and people are like, you should let more people know about these things. And, we tend to forget that some of the knowledge we accumulate in the financial services industry, other people don't have.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. A bit about that is even people who know the knowledge. So as I say, I worked with people in the financial services industry. They know about the knowledge and they have money, but they still weren't taking the actions to look after that money. That was something that I focus a lot on, both in all my work and with my daughters. It's not about what you know, it's about what actions you take. And so some of the comments that I like the most about book or my blogs are, I've read what you've done and I'm now taking action. And I think it's that action piece it's so more important than I just know about this or I know about that or I read this book or did that. But if you don't take action, then it makes no difference.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And I don't know if well, it sounds like you feel this way as I do when somebody picks up your book and somebody says, I read your book and I did XYZ. And, it's so fulfilling.
It is. I love it. And yeah, I'm very fortunate. I get a number of comments saying like, my daughters, so they've read the book, they enjoyed the stories, but they're now starting their own little business, or they've asked me to open an investment account, or we saw something about the investment market and they refer to one of the stories in the book. And so, yeah, that's just fantastic that they've been able to take the stories and the lessons and put it to real life. Because clearly that's my intention. And it's just fantastic to hear that those actions are being taken. And I hope in many years' time, they'll be like, I've got to this, I'm financially healthy because I read this book. That's the plan.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that you said is you recognize that you started saving because your parents saved. And so you got into that habit. So I think, that your kids and other kids will recognize that they learn these habits and behaviors from your books.
Yeah, I suppose it's worth sharing just a bit on my parents. So so they never sat down and taught me about money. Well, my dad reckons, he claims he did, but I can't remember. But the bit that they did is that, so I knew we lived in a sort of a 3-bed house, so it's very nice. But I knew my parents were getting promotions and stuff at work, but yet we stayed in the same house for 25 years as I was growing up. And I always wondered why we didn't move to bigger houses, or we had started to have a few extra luxuries, but not in line with what my parents' friends and stuff were doing, or my school friends' parents were doing. But as soon as I finished university or college, my parents essentially said, right, we've done our job, we're going to go and retire into sunny Spain. And they did. They just sold up their house in the UK and moved to Spain and retired much, much younger than all of their friends and my school friends' parents, etc. And I remember when I started working, I'd phone them up and say, oh, how's your day been? And they'll be like, we went to this little village, we had a nice lunch, we had a walk, we painted a chair. And I was like, oh, right. I want to be doing what you're doing because I've just done a 10-hour day at work. And so I thought, well, I kind of got to see what they did and the power of savings. And that really sparked me on to do that. And again, I kind of want to show that I want to role model that for my daughters as well. And I'm hoping that if parents read and talk to children about money, it'll also help the parents go, right, I need to be a good role model and start to change some of their habits and behaviors as well towards money.
Yeah, well, that's such a great point. I've talked to other people who work with kids, and they often feel the same way, is that the work they do gets parents to also engage with financial education where they may not do it on their own.
Yeah.
That's such a great point. So let's talk a little bit about Grandpa's Fortune Fables and, some of those things that go into it. One of the things you talk about is the difference between rich and wealthy. So tell us a little bit, what is the difference between rich and wealthy?
Yeah, so there's lots of different definitions, but in my opinion, rich is having money, but then you kind of spend money. And we see rich everywhere. It's on social media. We see people with the nice holidays, the nice clothes, they're going on these adventures, and we want to be like that. And so what I really want to do is to show by the book, and having these characters is to show, right, there is this character in the book called Richie Raccoon. So he's the person who finds gold and he's got these nice clothes. And so people want to be like him initially. But I really wanted to show this other character, and this is the people who are wealthy. And in my mind, wealthy is those who look after their money and have their money growing. So when they go to bed at night, their money's growing. So they save some, they invest some, they still spend. It's not like they're hermits eating beans in the cupboard. They're still spending, but they're making sure they save some. And therefore they have this luxury of always having an emergency fund. They've got money growing so they can retire early or do some bigger time off work. And that's what I really wanted to highlight in the book. But to do that, I really needed this other character, because as I say, you don't see wealthy on social media because it's just not as exciting as the rich people who are buying the super holidays, etc. And so that's why in the book, I had this two characters. I've got Richard Raccoon and I've got Grandpa. And Grandpa doesn't start with much money, but he's very patient. He saves. And by the end of it, pretty much, I haven't met a child yet who at the end of the book says he wants to be Richie Raccoon. Most of them say they want to be Grandpa, so they'd rather be wealthy than rich. And what I'm trying to do in the book is show that there's two different types of people out there when it comes to money. There's those who want money just to spend it, and there's people who want money to spend, but also to look after and make it work for them and grow that money over time, which is the wealthy. And so even though they can't see it in real life, they've got this character, and hopefully they'll refer back to wanting to be like Grandpa when they're sort of growing and thinking about what they're going to do with their money.
Yeah, well, I think that's such an important point, is because you see that is that people, the more money they make, I used to work with some very high net worth clients, and a lot of them would still be, barely making it in terms of their budget, because they'd buy the bigger house, they'd get the nicer car as their income grew. And, they never learned that trade-off of some delayed gratification. And it's so important.
Yeah, and it's really important. I can't remember the source of it, but I've seen it where when people think of people going into debt, that's people think of that as people that don't have much money and therefore they're going into debt. But actually, the number of kind of people in debt goes along the whole wealth spectrum. So people who are earning lots of money are still in debt. And this is excluding mortgages. This is just spending debt. So credit cards and loans to be able to spend. And so, yeah, we need to kind of cast shine a light onto some of this. When they're seeing people with these nice cars and the nice houses, a lot of them are using debt to sort of finance that. I remember when I was growing up, I used to watch a program called MTV Cribs. I think it might still exist, where they go around like a celebrity's house and it's got 10 bathrooms and 20 bedrooms and swimming pools and loads of cars. Most of those people use debt to pay for that. They even rented some of the houses just for the show. And now quite a few of them are bankrupt and don't have anywhere near the same bits they had on those shows when I was kind of growing up many years ago. And again, it's just a facade. And again, we need to kind of show a light that a lot of people are spending, but if you have $1 million and you spend $1 million, you have $0. And it's like, that's the kind of way. So what we need is to say, if you have $1 million and you still spend and enjoy it, but then save it. And that's what we want to do. And I like to showcase like celebrities like Shaquille O'Neal, the basketball player. I love those ones where they're buying businesses, they're teaching their kids about money, and not just saying, I've got loads of money, I'm going to give all my money to the kids. He's put in special rules about what money's going to his kids and what they need to do, and it's his money, not their money, but he's going to help them out if they're going to do the right things with it. So I think we need to, more and more needs to be showcased about these kind of celebrities who are showing that money can be done in a good way and invested and doing good causes, rather than just look at my big house and all my cars.
Definitely. Well, and it's interesting because I was thinking about NBA players, because you read about some of the NBA players and their minimum salary is $1 million, $2 million a year, but so many of them go bankrupt, especially after they stop playing, because they've got these lifestyles that are unsupportable. But they don't know. They're drafted. They're 19-year-old kids. And
yeah, well, that's one of the big ones. Again, same with the financial services piece, as I was saying with my previous, when I was working in investments, is once you do earn a bit of money, you become a bit blasé, or a bit, that's maybe a bit harsh, but a bit naive, because you always just think, I earn money, I don't need to worry about it, I'll just earn some more. Then I can do whatever, I can spend money today because I can just earn some more tomorrow. And that's their mindset. And then it's just when they can't earn tomorrow, or they want to do something else that means they step away, and then that's when it starts to hit reality. And sports stars is a classic example, because whilst they're playing, they can just earn more money. But clearly, as soon as they stop playing, they can't just earn more tomorrow, and yet they still want to spend as they did yesterday, and that becomes a very harsh reality. Luckily there are some. I know I've been speaking. There's a really good guy called Jed Collins who used to be an NFL player, and I love the fact that he's pretty much proactively going around and trying to talk to as many sports stars, mostly NFL, to sort of provide financial education, because again, there's a lot of, they might be earning big money, but if you can't look after it, then the financial health is going to suffer.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's the same issues that everybody else has. The numbers are just bigger, as you point out. Lifestyle creep, as we've been talking about. Well, one of the things you talk about, and I think this is still along the lines of rich and wealthy, tortoise versus the hare, is about patience. Why do you consider patience to be a superpower?
Because it's really one that doesn't get talked about too much, but I just believe it's so important. And people who aren't patient are more likely just to spend impulsively. They're going to potentially use debt. They're going to potentially gamble, potentially more likely to get scammed. And because they want something now, and in the world that we live in, where we can get instant gratification in so many ways, we know that you can order something and get it delivered pretty much the same day for a lot of cases. People don't want to wait, but yet we need to wait, because that's when. And there's the famous study, and I'm sure you've talked about it in previous podcasts, the Stanford marshmallow experiment, whereas in the 70s they got the children and gave them one marshmallow, the option of one marshmallow, or wait 15 minutes and get 2 marshmallows. And then they observed the children and those children over time, and there's a strong correlation between those who could delay their gratification, i.e. went for the 2 marshmallows, and how successful they were, not just in terms of money, but in terms of relationships, in terms of their careers, because they could make better decisions because they gave themselves a chance to pause, delay, and make different decisions. And so I think it's just so important, especially in today's world where it's so easy to spend money. We tap our cards, we get something the next day. We think of something and we can straight away buy it. Whereas when I was growing up, that was not the case. If you wanted to buy something, you had to see it first, and then you had to go and get the money, and then you had to go to the shop. So you had to find the right time. And there's always like obstacles in the way before I can go and spend that money. And in a lot of cases, you probably forget about it or not bother, and you think it's too much effort, or you'll see something else that you'd want that's more important, and you spend your money there. Whereas today, it's like, I've seen it, I want it, I'll have it. And so what we need to do is to teach children to be patient. And so it's one of the 3 rules of wealth that I kind of mentioned in the book. And I kind of use this Richie Raccoon character who isn't patient to start with, and show that he kind of loses out when he tries to find ways to make money, or in this case, grow a forest quickly, initially by playing a game, so gambling, and then borrowing money as well. And he realizes that he should have just been patient, and he would have been much better off. And so I encourage all parents to try and help their children to be patient in a small way. So the example I use a lot is to say, if you give your child a chocolate bar or any kind of snack, allow them to eat most of it, but get them to save just a little bit for tomorrow, or when a few days in the future. Just so, and if they do that, give them a reward, like a extra little snack or something like that. Or if you say to them, you can have half an hour of TV now, or you can have 20 minutes today, and you can have 15 minutes tomorrow. So again, giving them a little extra bit if they do delay. And again, once they see that there's a reward for delaying, they'll want to be more patient. And then when they become adults, the world will reward them for that patience. Whether it's investing in the stock market or doing stuff like that, you have to be patient, and that will reward them over that period of time.
Yeah, well, that's such a great point, is because, as you point out, is there's so much instant gratification with Amazon, but, everybody's like, you got to do this, you got to do that. But then there's not an emergency savings account, which is delayed gratification, because that's money you're not spending today. So that's so important. And it's, it's even the principles of insurance. Insurance is about, to some degree, delayed gratification because the premium dollars that you're paying aren't money that you're going to see tomorrow or anything that you do. So I love the principle. One thing I wanted to ask you about is because I get this question from a lot of advisors is, they've written some articles, they have some concepts, and, they go, okay, well, should I write a book? How do I know that it's time to write a book? How did you know that it was time for you to write a book?
So I actually, because I've been writing these blogs for a long time, and in a lot of the blogs I had these short stories in there, and some of them were really popular, and I was getting a lot of feedback, and there's people telling me that they kind of shared this with that I felt. So I was fortunate I had this content and kind of had feedback on that already, and it was actually people asking, saying, are you going to write a book? And so I was like, oh, well, I've got some of these stories, and plus because my blog is for parents to read, and then sort of take the lessons and talk to their own children, so the parents but I want to do something that goes directly to children, and so that's why I decided to write that book, like a book. So Grandpa's Fortune Fables.
Yes.
If you're watching it on the video, so I felt that it would be really good, a different forum to sort of take my content and put it in a fun way. And I kind of researched about what the process is to write a book and publish a book. And fortunately, because of the way it sort of Amazon's set up today, where you essentially write the book and get it, put the cover and stuff, and they essentially make the book for you, and you don't have to hold loads of stock. They essentially print on demand. So kind of once I found that out, I felt it was really worth the investment of my time to take my content and kind of repurpose it, put some different characters and a constant flow around the little stories that I already had. And I've really enjoyed the process. It got me clear about what I wanted to do. What are my top money lessons? I've written hundreds of blogs, but I had to kind of go through, right, what ones do I think are the most important? And I really enjoyed that kind of process. So even if I've been fortunate enough to sell sort of thousands of copies, and but even if I didn't, I think I would have enjoyed that whole, even just the process and the fact that I've got something tangible, because clearly having the blogs on the website is nice, but having something I've printed off, and I remember even printing off just an early version of it. It felt so real rather than just digital content. So yeah, I really recommend that if you've got content you think it's going to make an impact, then yeah, just start writing it, even if only a few people read it. I think your process for going through that will make your work even better and future content even stronger.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. That's how I started. I'd written a bunch of articles and I started condensing them down to a book. So it helped refine my future content, but it was a great thing. And it sounds like you reached the same thing, as you just reached a point and you knew it was time to write a book. Yeah. And I think that's important for people. So since we're talking about your book and you mentioned Amazon, where can people find your book? Right now, we're speaking, you're in Thailand, you're from the UK. What countries can people find your book in?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon, and so that's the main place where you can buy it. Or you can come to my website if you want, but you can only if you're going to buy it sort of 5+, because then I can get offer a discount relative to Amazon. So yeah, so mostly some countries is in bookstores. So it's in bookstores, popular bookstores in Singapore, and Bookazine in Hong Kong. It is in the little bookshop in New York or New Jersey, sorry. But yeah, most of it, Amazon is the place to get the book if you want to go. But if you want to find out about the book or even read the first few chapters, then go to my website, bluetreesavings.com, and you can download the first 2 chapters and have a read and see if it appeals to yours and your children's appetite, and learn more about it before purchasing.
Well, that's great. Now, I think you mentioned, orders of 5 or more. Do advisors get a discount if they buy it in bulk for their clients?
Yeah, no, and that's been really, so there's a 10% discount for people buying 5+ books, and there's a 20% discount if people are buying them for schools, because I'm keen to get this book into as many schools as possible, because it's fantastic that some parents are buying the book and reading with their children, but those parents who are buying it are probably already thinking about, I want to teach my kids about money. And that's already a massive advantage. I want to get to those children whose parents it just doesn't come up with, or they don't have the financial means to buy the book. And so if I can get it into school libraries, so I've been fortunate enough that individuals and companies have been buying the book to give to their local schools. And in particular, advisors have been doing that. And for large advisors, if they contact me directly and I want to do big bulk ones, I can put in a printer page which kind of says this book's from them and had their logo. So I've done that a number of times with different advisors to be able to do that. But yeah, no, it's been a really nice gift. I find a goodwill gift from advisors to give to their clients, because if you look after your clients' children, then the client's going to be pretty happy in my mind.
100%. It's just an extra thing. So to wrap up the show, this is a question I ask all my guests is, what is your number one tip on financial wellness?
Yeah, so I think it's the most basic one, and that is just every time you get some money, save 10% of it. And it's the simplest one. And if we can get children to do that, adults should be doing that. Just every time we get some money, just because, as we talked about earlier, it's about habits and actions, and that's the simplest one. Those little bits add up over time, and once they start to add up, you get excited about it. You want to make it bigger and bigger, and you'll start saving. And it provides you your emergency fund, that it provides you your starting capital to start investing. So it's such a simple action, but sadly, not enough people are actually taking that action. And so I hope by sharing that tip, but also encouraging parents to get their children to save every time they get some money, just get them to save 10% of it, and it'll make the world a difference.
100%. Yeah, I do that with my son. Is we have an app and Greenlight, and you can direct a certain percentage to spend anywhere, certain percentage to savings, and a certain percent to charity. And so at the end of the year, he can make a donation to a charity. So it's a great way to go. I love it. So we've talked about your book and where people can find your book. Where can people read your blog and learn more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, so my website is bluetreesavings.com. So it's all one word, bluetreesavings.com. So there I release a blog every week. I've got an online course on there, and you can find out more about the book. But I'm also quite active on LinkedIn. So I try and do a few posts a week to give new tips about money. So if you look up just Will Rainey, I've got a little emoji face of mine next to that, and you should be able to find me on there. And so it'd be great to connect and follow, and you can message me on there, or I'm happy to take direct email. So will@bluetreesavings.com for any queries or questions. And I love to hear stories from other people about how they're teaching their kids about money, or anything like that, or how they were taught about money from their parents. I love hearing those stories. So if anyone's listening and got a good story, then please let me know, and I'd love to hear it and potentially share it with more people.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. And for people who are watching or listening, I'll also put all the links to find Will and Will's website in the show notes, so you can reach out, follow Will. His newsletter is great. I highly recommend it. So Will, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. And everybody, thank you for tuning in to the Tony Steuer Podcast. Until next time.